Right, and we are live. Hello, good people. Hello, everybody. Are we all panicking? Are we all smiling? Have we all recovered from what was, and I will say, a shock day from a Springbok announcement point of view? Once we eventually got to the Springbok announcement, lots of very interesting pre-announcement, I don't know the right words, but activities, I think is probably quite a safe way to, or formalities. But we eventually got through a Springbok announcement, and it was not the Springbok team announcement that I think everyone was expecting. And now I am joined by Carl, Reza, and Rudy to look at that Springbok announcement and to find out whether we are panicking, whether we dare to be excited, and whether we can understand the logic and the thinking regarding what happened this afternoon and what that currently means for our World Cup chances. Gentlemen, are we all well?
Well, that question is relative. It is a public holiday tomorrow, so as well as I probably could be on a Tuesday.
Wild PR stunt, to be fair, to go and drop it just for the public holiday and be like, you know what? If anybody likes this, just gonna go have a few drinks tonight. But tomorrow, what time they wake up tomorrow, they'll forget it.
I'm English, so no.
Don't come here with your problems, dude. Just because,
they so bad.
just because you name one of the worst English World Cup squads I've ever seen doesn't mean that you get to come on here and start tuning us.
I haven't started yet.
To be fair, let's give him something to talk about.
Yeah, fair. Ruth, how are you?
I'm doing okay, brother, under the current climate. I just would have liked if they would have announced the squad in alphabetical order because they put us through so much.
Dude.
The drama.
There was no. I was trying the entire time when I'm busy doing it. I'm trying to work out. I'm like, well, what order is this going? Because somebody's like, dude, it's obvious. It's alphabetical order, and I'm bro. No matter how you do it, Marco van Staden does not start first. It doesn't matter what alphabetical order, positional, forwards, backs, caps, caps, age. Wild. There's no order where he starts, where he's in the first name on the list. So what order are they literally going with? Eventually you could see that they were working towards your senior player sitting in the front. But the 20 players before then. Just I was really hoping at the very least they can go right forwards alphabetical or backs alphabetical. Even if they just went forwards back. No. Now we're gonna go in some random, literally school photograph order. Well, I think that's probably what happened. The photographer went, right, you're going to go that way, you're going to go that way, and then that was the list.
Only in South Africa where, I was earlier in the week, we obviously watched the All Black squad announcement, and it's like they got this real formal, very school type, in order, A to Z. And South Africa, we start off with that lovely anthem. So we're rocking it, but it's a bit of good with a bit of confusion, with a bit of everything at the moment.
It's classic Rugby. That's what it is. It's just never let them know your next move, even if it's the most unimportant thing in the whole world.
We can't even do a team announcement straightforward. We have to add a bit of extra something, and then we're kneeling and we're being capped, and it's like. Can I just?
The Marco van Staden stood on the cushion.
How to tell he doesn't have a degree, dude. Man was about to stand on the podium and take it and accept Olympic gold.
Jesse Creel couldn't kneel because his muscles were too big.
Can we talk about the fact that half the team just looked buggered? Like Evan walks in and he's like, can't walk, and Jesse Creel and Billy couldn't kneel, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
That's what happens when you play the RGs too.
The muscles are too big, man.
Yeah, no, fair. Well, listen, we're going to have to talk about Jesse Creel because he's got a lot of games he's going to have to play potentially. Do not start throwing that around. I will not accept that slander, especially when we get tuned. But everyone's quite happy to see a 150 kg Tongan ring run the 100 in 12 seconds. But how dare Jesse Creel look like Jesse Creel? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Tongans are like, no, it's just mama's good cooking, and for us, it's like, well. I mean,
hey, look! As long as Mama's good cooking, includes a bit of steroids on this.
Well, they've got that whole substance that it's part of their diet, which is basically like a natural steroid. But anyway,
yeah.
So gentlemen, we're going to have to go through the Springbok squad. There's 33 players to talk about. Going through some of the comments, and so MC says stacked team with great players, no Pollard, but it is what it is. I think we're going to be saying is what it is a lot in this World Cup. And LIBBOK is worth backing, but if he struggled, who's taking his spot? Cheslin. Well, Damian Williams' name is the other 10. Alpha Lincoln saying defense can win a World Cup final. 9-5, 10 LIBBOK, 11 Jesse, Yo. 12 Andre, 13 Damon Denlindy, 14 Moody, 15 Billy. Can you imagine the tight defense? I can imagine, to be fair.
Yeah,
Not
but I
Sensi
mean, if you can't
reckons.
slot a penalty, I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter.
This is also the problem, isn't it? Not that he said the pants were too tight. Camelo's saying they're not going to win. There's no way Springboks can beat France, Ireland, or the All Blacks. I'll talk about that a bit. Albert saying that Andre, David, and Jesse could be in the same back line. They could in theory. Andre Pollard is the most important Springbok in the team. There's no way Creel or Moody has better defense than Colby on wing. Creel definitely probably does, but I'm not going to go into that debate. Now Jay saying Box will crush Iron. Right, well, first of all, chaps, before we actually sort of dive into the intricacies of the squad, there's a few things that we kind of have to talk about. And that's obviously the injuries. And in terms of injured players, now my understanding, and I did try to check this, and I haven't seen anything which sort of is not the case. But an injured player is an injury replacement. So you cannot just almost say, right, Andre Pollard passed the fitness test, therefore he's replacing this guy in the squad. There does have to be an injury before you can replace players. So it's not a backup, B list. You can just draw them in. There has to be an injury. From what I understand, there's actually no massive regulations regarding who gets injured. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can't just go replace a prop with a wing. But if a scrum half gets injured, you don't have to replace a scrum half, for example, which in our case we definitely wouldn't, given the fact that we've got 1,500 of it. But I think before we sort of look at the squad, there's certain things that we have to talk about that people can get upset about as you want, but with the uncontrollables, and then we'll talk about the uncontrollables. Now, Reese, the uncontrollables are Andre Pollard injured, not being able to recover, which was always the plan. Lekanya re-injuring himself last weekend, which again, not part of the plan. And now Lotiaga suddenly picking up this chest condition, which is going to warrant a specialist opinion. Also, not something you just can kind of predict. So, I suppose the big thing is that. Is there justification to be angry about the lack of preparedness with regards to these positions? Or do you think it's literally the luck of the draw that we probably just happen to have two of maybe the most important positions where maybe there isn't as much depth, being the ones where the players didn't manage to recover?
Yeah, good question, Steve. To be very honest, and I am going to be blunt, and unfortunately, people must realize that I am a Springbok supporter at heart, and I'm through and through. So when I bash them, it's simply because I need to think about it from the other side of the coin as well. And with that in mind, I think we've been talking about it for a few months, and these have always been problem areas for us at fly-off and at outside centre. And we talked about how scary it was that Manie Libbok was only getting his chance following URC now and was really only kind of stepping into the backup role to Andre Pollard. We were infuriated, in fact, that he was only being brought in as the incumbent to Andre now. So with that in mind, you go, well, hell, Andre's gone. Manie's now first choice.
And we've lost Alton.
And well, we just haven't considered Alton.
Yeah.
It's gone out the window. He hasn't got game time, so fair enough. But that's because, as you said, perhaps a lack of preparedness on behalf of the coaching staff and the selectors and so on. And I think that there has to be some partial blame put on them. I know Rudy is a big fan in our coaching staff, and they've given us good reason to be in years past. But I think we have to apportion some blame here and say to them, guys, you had 4 years to develop a backup plan. Last World Cup was Alton. Now it's Manie. Now we don't have a backup to either of them, which is scary. And the same thing goes for 13. It's quite obvious what the problems are there. We're sitting with the exact same 13 problem that we had in 2019, as well as at fly-off. So one can only say that they haven't learned any lessons from that. And luckily, last time they didn't have these injury problems. So yeah, they missed a bullet there. Now they've been caught with it, and we'll have to see how it lies.
And then Rudy, Carl, you want to jump in?
Let's be honest, Mornestein only just retired. You're fine.
Okay, no, relax. But I mean, that's an interesting point, though. I mean, Rudy. So do you think? I mean, was it a case of there were players out there that probably deserved a chance, or do you think that they've had to kind of limit their options because they weren't necessarily the options there? For example, fly half. Before Manie Libbok really stepped up, people kept complaining about just a woeful lack of flyers. Not all of a sudden Rob Dupree has a good season in the Premiership and all of a sudden he's the godsend and stuff. Do you think was this a case of the Bok management being stubborn by not picking players that were out there to pick? Or do you think they just thought they didn't need to look at those players because of the players they had?
I think to a large degree, based on the circumstances and the uncontrollables that you talk about, his hand was forced, or the coach's hands were forced a little bit. If you take into account a guy like Johan Goosen, who was the URC goal kicker of the season in terms of accuracy, he would have been in the framework, still relatively young, has some experience, but then again, very injury prone. So I think that would have been a big risk, considering he also came back from an injury. So if you look at a LIBBOK kind of guy, the standout obviously in the URC this last season and the season before. So yes, he did get his chance a little bit too late. My only concern is the URC and the tournament we're going to now, the Rugby World Cup, is going to be two different things. So can he match that? I'm not saying he can't. I'm not here to criticize him. In fact, I back every player that's gone and been chosen. It's just we need to then, with this crisis at fly half to Andre Pollard, we need to then back Mani in basically every single game, because it's not going to be fair if he's going to be asked to sit out the less important games and we switch fly halves and expect him to do something come semi-final.
But really, to circle back to what Steve was asking, is it not unfair on Mani that he even has to be backed to such an extent? Is it not? Should we not be apportioning some blame to the selectors and coaching staff for putting him in this position?
Yeah, 100%. That's what I'm saying. It's not Mani. I think he should have been given an opportunity earlier, but then also other players coming through, like I mentioned, Johan Goosen. But the coaches definitely have to take responsibility. But I want to back them in saying that they have faith in what they have seen, judging on Mani's performance.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, I suppose, is that they've made big decisions. Look, they have made big decisions. You know, it would have been it would have been easier, and I think a lot of people, even if you're not a big fan, to have said, well, we'll take 3 scrum halves, we throw Alton back into that squad, even if he doesn't play a minute. He's a World Cup winning fly half. Yes, he didn't play in the big games, but he's played in the World Cup. He's got 49 tests. You know, he's been there. He's done that. He's got.
And for all intents and purposes, the way they spoke about him and his role in the last World Cup, as the sort of behind the scenes researcher, even that alone would have been invaluable, I think.
Yeah, but and they always said that he was the second choice 10 up until less than a year ago. He was the second choice 10, and you kind of understand that there was other situations which sort of force him out, and you can kind of understand if you're going into the World Cup with Pollard as your number as your first choice, and you're thinking, right, well, Mani LIBBOK's going to be our second choice. Yes, he would have liked to have had more game time, but the situation with Alton necessitated that. And then if we really need, we've got Damian Phillips as an option. But now to go as Mani LIBBOK as number 1, Damian Phillips as number 2, and to still not consider an almost 50 test fly half is probably quite a big red flag. And the big thing everybody keeps asking is the goal kicking issue. Carl, how much do you think the goal kicking issue is an issue with regards to Damian Williams, who hasn't played 10 for his franchise in the last 18 months? In fact, there's only one member of the squad going who's actually played 10 for their franchise in the last basically 2 years. And LIBBOK is not a bad goal kicker. For as much as people are quick to sort of say he's not a great goal kicker, he's not a bad one. He just kind of has his off and on days. But how much of that is a concern?
I mean, the further you go in the competition, the more it'll actually become a concern. I think in the pool stage is less so. Although that being said, you're playing Ireland and Scotland, so yeah, you can't leave points on the field. Scotland coming off beating a second string side in France, but showed that they can come back from a huge deficit. And Ireland just being Ireland. I think it's gonna be problematic when, like, I think it was Rudy saying that playing defensive rugby, might be the way that you want to play, but that means if you're playing defensive rugby, you're going to have to try and win by kicking penalties. That kind of is we're doing well here, but we're kind of screwed.
Yeah, I mean that's your reward for good. That's your reward for good defense is generally penalties and field position and the ability to get back in their halves.
But if you can't kick them,
exactly, yeah, it's pointless. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the last time I saw Faf playing, he was actually kicking pretty decently. Wasn't he your best kicker in last year?
Statistically, he actually was been out. He has been
Yeah.
out. In terms of percentage-wise, I think he's missed one kick in the last. Look, I don't think he only had about 9 or 10. But to be fair, 9 out of 10, he only missed one. So it's an
I
interesting.
wouldn't. Not to be sneezed at.
Well, I suppose it's an interesting selection. Do you? I mean, I suppose because let's be honest, there's no ways they've sat down and said, "Ah, we don't need a goal kicker. We're not. It's that's not an issue." So I suppose they must have looked at it and sat there thinking, "Well, actually, we're comfortable enough with Marnie as an option, Faf as an option, and Chesney as an option to warrant not going and getting an Alton Yankees who kicks at over 80%. People." This whole I don't know why there's a bit of a rich going that he wasn't a great kicker, which was the weirdest thing because statistically
Fantastic.
he's a better goal kicker than Pollard is actually. So it's an interesting concept, but they've obviously had this conversation and still said we're actually still happy with what we've got. Which I think a lot of South public is going, well, you must be seeing something that we're not, because that for me it remains to be the biggest talking point, and even people in the comments talking about the fact is that lack of a 90% goal kicker, the lack of a Emiliano Buffelli, a Richie Mwanga, a Johnny Sexton, a Finn Russell, a Owen Farrell, something like an Owen Farrell, for example.
2 years ago, yeah.
No, Owen Farrell is fine. I don't know why. I know you hate him. Reason doesn't back him up, but Owen Farrell is a world-class goal kicker. At the end of the day, he is a world-class goal kicker. He is a world-class goal kicker.
Can I just throw a spanner in the works and say, don't be surprised to see Andre Pollard feature in the quarterfinal.
Yeah, so the point of it, I suppose, so that is an interesting point, the fact that there's nothing to say these players won't play in the World Cup. The problem is you kind of are relying on an injury to happen, which is a very weird concept.
You're relying on more than an injury, Steve. What you're actually relying on is the fact that Andre Pollard's going to slip back into a system he hasn't been part of for however long he's been out for. I mean, it's incredibly hard.
To be fair, we're not going to ask him to do anything besides kick for goal. That's just it's just like back for kickoff 9. You just take it and go to Damien and then kick for goal, and after that you're fine. Just tackle.
Do you not think that they've? I mean, Villy's been playing a lot, fitting in at 10 quite a lot over the last season. Do you think that they've been like, right, so when we really need him to, he'll just fit in there and we'll play around it?
From a playmaker point of view, I think definitely. I think that there are other options at 10. I mean, for example, I think Faf de Klerk has become an option at 10. People are saying that Jaden Henderson could do, if worse comes to worse type thing, in terms of playing there during the opening. But again, the goal kicking comes as an option. Although Jaden Henderson actually is a goal kicking option as well. He hasn't done a lot of it because he's had a lot of goal kickers around him. But he kicked throughout school and actually kicked for the SC under-20s back in the day.
Look, I don't think the question is, can these guys fill in and fly off and do a half decent job? It's whether or not they can fill in and fly off in a World Cup when they weren't expecting to and be match winners.
And beat the All Blacks.
Is a whole different story. I mean, we all back their quality. No one's doubting them, but goodness, the ask is massive.
Reza, just to push back a little bit on 100 Pollard and him featuring the quarterfinal, do you not see him playing against the All Blacks come the 25th now in the final warm-up?
I don't really. Well, even if he plays the warm-up, I don't think it matters too much. I think that if Marnie is playing most of the way through this World Cup and we get to a quarterfinal and suddenly Andre Pollard puts his hand up and says, I'm 100% fit, I think I back Marnie to continue playing at that point. Yeah. I really don't think it's one from a form point of view. There's too many unknowns with Andre at that point. And let's be honest, if Marnie gets us to a quarterfinal or even a semi-final or whatever, he's earned his right to be there. And I think it would just be a travesty to see Andre usurp him at that point. I love Andre. I think he's fantastic, but if he's going to be out this long, no thanks.
But then also that also would have huge ramifications if you lost. Can you imagine the crucifixion he'd get?
Correct. Well, then you also have all the money. If Andre played, we would have won.
Springbok career.
I'm not also saying we should necessarily start Andre, but I think if he's fit and ready and able, off the bench, LIBBOK then back him at 10. Andre off the bench.
My only thing is, surely he's not a genuine candidate to playing against Wales or All Blacks, because, I mean, Andre Pollard has been backed in bad form, in terrible form, with game time, with no game time for the last 5 years, pretty categorically. So my thinking is, if he's got a 50% chance, even a 40% chance of being fit enough for the World Cup, and he was ready to play these warm-up games, surely they would have taken him. I don't see why they wouldn't.
It must be bad. It must be
yeah.
bad. It must be really bad. So,
the fact, even the fact that he's been taken as an injury cover for me is surprising for these 2 games. I mean, half of me thinks it's probably more a case of him being with the medical staff, so they can kind of continue to track the progress to make that a call. But yeah, that is a big call. But chaps, let's actually have a look at this at the squad, shall we? And there it is. And obviously, we've already spoken about the deficiencies at 10 and maybe the issues at 13. It's amazing how everybody who's been hating on Jesse Creel are going to have to really get behind him because he's about to put in a big stint. But regardless, so take away those 2 positions. Everybody kept talking about the fact that you shouldn't pick on form. You should be picking on. I mean, you shouldn't pick on reputation. You should be picking on form, and you should have the ability to play yourself into the World Cup. There are Dion Faries, Jean Clains, Grant Williams, and Caden Moody selections in this side or in the squad, which would recommend that form has definitely come into the conversation. So really, take away the 2 positions we talk about. There are certainly some very exciting selections in the squad.
So for me, I think the interesting one, everyone felt Andre Esterhuizen also won't get an opportunity. And I think for me, I made a prediction earlier on. I think it was actually last week sometime on what my squad would be. And I was totally wrong. So I'm going to put my hand up. But it's also as a result of the injuries. But I think a guy like Marvin Ori in the last game also put his hand up where he couldn't be ignored. Like I mentioned, the Andre Esterhuizen. And then obviously a guy like Caden Moody, young but old at heart. So the balance of the team is obviously a topic for debate. But I think in terms of what has happened in the uncontrollables, in the injury department, I think this team can do well.
Yeah, so Reese, which selections A, surprise you and B, excite you?
To jump off the back of Rudy there, I think most of my trying to stand out ones, I would go with Trevor. I think is not totally unexpected, but there were concerns at the fact that he wouldn't actually be selected. Obviously, I know you had some worries there, Steve, about whether Trevor would be.
He wasn't playing.
Yeah, he wasn't playing. I think really amongst the forwards, that's kind of my only sort of surprise there. If we go towards the backs, I think Esterhuizen is a great call. I think fantastic. I'm glad he's there. Caden Moody, of course, I think is the perfect example of played his way into this team. Too good to be ignored. And obviously I'm glad Makazole is there. I think perhaps it's more a case of, again, injury enforced. There was space for him at the end of the day. And we've got everything we wanted there. Kirtley, of course, is there. Jaden is fantastic. That's a surprise. We weren't too sure about it. And then we thought that there would be 3, and we thought that obviously the 4th would not go. But Kobus is there.
Again, do we think that's a space thing? Because surely if Pollard's fit, we don't take 4 we should take 4 scrum halves. And
I do.
And Phillips would have really gone.
I mean, regardless of whether we picked him or not, I'm still confused as to why we've picked 4. I mean, you've picked one of those. I'm not entirely sure who, but the consensus seems to be that it's Faf who will be the serious backup fly half, which I think is ridiculous, personally. And I just don't really understand this 4 scrum half thing. That's the one concern for me. But yeah, some really exciting ones. Obviously, Grant Williams. I think in terms of the backs and who we wanted to see, we're getting that. We're also getting a bit of what we didn't want to see. We probably got more than we actually wanted there. But yeah, the forwards pretty standard. The backs, that's where all the excitement lies for me.
Well, the one thing I will say, not pretty standard with the forwards, and I'll go to you, is taking only 2 out-and-out hookers and going with that Dion Fourie utility sort of role instead of a Joseph Drever, for example. And I think would probably be about the only squad that have only taken two hookers. Do you see, Malcolm Marks and Bongi Manami playing every game, or do you think it'll be a case of Dion Fourie will deputise off the bench at 16 for a couple of games? And not even necessarily come on and hooker, but be the option if needs be.
Who are the minnows in your pool again?
Minnows, yeah. You've got Romania and then bloody Tonga.
Okay, so
we're not allowed
Tonga-
to use that
Tonga-
word
Tonga-
anymore.
Yeah, there are no minutes.
So Tonga, your chances are you'll get an injury or two. I mean, you should beat them,
Or
but
10.
I reckon they're going to be dark horses. Actually, I reckon they'll topple one of the top three, just randomly, because they do have just insane talent in that back line. But I think maybe against Romania they might just chuck him in at number 2 and have. I think probably Malcolm Marx is the one you have to keep. That you absolutely have to. He cannot get injured. If he gets injured, you're pretty fucked. So I think he'll probably only play the big games. I don't know. Like, it's a strange one for me because I'm not a forward at all.
Really not.
No, of course not. I mean, you know, size-wise,
so I should have thrown this to Reza.
never appealed to me. But it's an interesting one, and it's for the first time. It's like for the first time I think in South African, I don't know, World Cup history. I'm not overly scared of the forward pack.
Yo, that's a big call.
Yeah, that's
No,
That's
when-
a
when-
huge call.
when
You
you
telling me
go
that
back-
you see Stephen Kitts of Malcolm Marx, France Mahuma take to the field with Evan Etzebeth, Franco Mostert, Sia Kuli, Peter Steph, the toy, Dwayne Moon,
No,
and
I'm
you
not
then
arguing
see
that
some of
they're
those
gonna
guys come off the
fuck
bench.
us
You're not scared.
I'm not arguing that they're going to fuck us up, but I would argue that in previous World Cups, you look at every single position of a Springbok scrum, every single one of them is a star player that would walk into any team. I don't see that as much in this one.
Okay, which team doesn't any of the best 8 forwards not walk into? Who's not walking into any of those teams?
Well, Ori and Klein wouldn't.
Well, I don't even sure Orient
They would
can
be
walk into our
starting.
team. Yeah, as I said, you could have Eben and Franco starting with Arceus Neyman off the bench.
I mean, Marco van Staden is very good, but he's not tested enough to do so.
also not starting.
Exactly.
I mean, I would start him. He's fucking good.
That is a walking contradiction, Carl.
You can't say
sorry.
I don't think
I
he's that
think
good,
he's
but I would start him.
I think he would, but I don't think other coaches would. But also, like, look, Jesus Christ, is Dwayne Vermeulen going?
Yes. And
Of course he's
Jasper.
going. Okay, so who do you reckon starting out of those two in the most important games?
What, Dwayne and Jasper?
Yeah.
Dwayne, hands down, after what I've seen in the last month.
But would he walk into any other squad at the moment?
Squad, yes.
Absolutely.
Team, no.
Squad, yes. Sorry, team.
Starting 15, maybe not, but squad, yeah. I think
He's
he makes.
look. I say 5 years ago, fuck, I'd walk onto the field and be like, no, I'm not playing him. Bye.
Listen, you offer Eddie Jones Dwayne Vermeulen. He starts him in every position on the field.
Yeah. And twice a 10.
Look, it's still a very good forward pack. It's just not. It's not as fearful as what I was used to when living in fucking South Africa.
Okay, so
yeah.
and in the backs, just out of curiosity, are you scared of the potential there? Well, not really. Is it too inexperienced?
Only in the back three, and basically only on the wings, and maybe Andre Esterhuizen. But then again, I fucking support England, so we're fucked anyway. Like we'd lose in every position. So I don't know. I think going against the All Blacks, well, hypothetically going against Ireland. I don't know.
I'd take Damien
It's
Williams
gonna
at
be
10
like-
before 16 any day.
I mean, yeah, so would I. At least, one's grey, one isn't. But
One's nice to referees.
Sure.
but I don't know. Like the thing is, like you're gonna struggle with a power game against Ireland because they're strong as shit now. McCloskey at 12 is gonna match Esterhuizen.
Well, Damien,
Yeah, it's interesting. I think South Africa's power game is going to be a bit harder to use now.
See, to be honest, so I'll be honest. I disagree with that quite strongly because I think that's the reason why I still think we've got a chance. I think that we can put together a 23 which can match most teams. Yes, I think there are a couple of question marks because, for example, you have LIBBOK starting against a Remain Intermac, Johnny Sexton, and Richie Mwanga, and the pedigree is very different. But we know he's got the ability to be able to do it. And I think that pack-wise, I mean, France and Ireland have got the best packs in the world. New Zealand pack is looking pretty strong. But I don't necessarily see any packs which are going to bully the box, which is always sort of a bit of a good omen going in. I think the biggest issue we've got is keeping our best 23 fit, because I think our depth
Yeah.
has taken a bit of a knock with those injuries.
And I think coming back to what we were talking about earlier, of have the coaches made an error in how long it took them to bring in Manie Libbok and other players like that. It's kind of a problem they've had for a lot longer than just this set of coaching staff. It's almost a South African rugby mentality. And I get, experience does win World Cups. That's been proven time and time again. And so, in some ways, yes, the team you've got, especially the old buggers, it's what you want there. But when in the 4 years between them, the rigidity has not helped them at all in this scenario, whereas it has before.
Carl, you're absolutely correct. I mean, there was the post-Mornay stain was the experimental Johan person who eventually landed up with Alton Yankees, who, poor man, had trial by fire for his first 20-odd tests, and we were in one of the very worst Springbok phases of our lives, and all because, we had Mornay Stain every game. So what was the point of trying out anyone else?
Yeah, and then we didn't pick anybody from overseas, so we had a trade for 23.
And also, you arguably wasted one of your best fly-off talents in a while in Pat Lambie because of Mornay Stain.
Okay, hold on.
I really like that.
Pat Lambie got smoked.
Yeah, everyone liked Pat Lambie.
Barely playing before that.
And the man was on the path to a huge comeback.
Heineken Men didn't want to play him.
Well, he couldn't play him. He was injured every 4 weeks. I spent 4 months in the hospital every time with a concussion. I will forgive most coaches for not being able to back Pat Lambie properly, because he couldn't get back properly. Poor lad. I mean, if Pat Lambie was fit, he'd probably. I mean, in theory, if the trajectory was going, he might have even put Pollard on the bench for years.
Yeah, he's unfortunately a lost talent. I think he was very good.
Right. So let's talk about areas which are very strong. Let's talk about areas that an opposition coach watches today and goes, hell, how do we deal with that? Really, what are areas what could be our go-to? What can be our, in case of emergency, break glass? This is an area we can dominate against any team.
I think most importantly would be the set piece, and in particular our scrums.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to add, though, a lot of it comes down to, so we have the kits of Mulhaber, the Oxen Chair, Vincent Koch, and it's like a lot hinges on the hunger in this tournament. So they have the experience, they have the technique, they've pushed back basically every front row that I've seen. And then also the interchangeability between the front rows with the bench that comes on also stands us in excellent stead. But it does come down to that hunger. And then also particularly in the lineouts, where I think we base a lot of our maul drive. And if we have that hunger and we have that passion and intensity, that becomes a far more intricate part of how we play.
Reza, let's talk about the lineouts a little bit. I think nobody's ever going to doubt the South African scrummaging prowess. And I think Oxen Chair is only going to add to that, because we know that they've got that combination of Ox, Bongi, and France Mulhaber from a height perspective, and then the kits of Koch, Marks, whichever one starts and comes off the bench. We kind of know that they've generally will get the better of most teams. Luatiaga is a big loss from the lineup perspective. Who do you move to 5? Do you go with Marvin or Franco Master? Both very, very capable lineup operators. One has been used utility forward, mostly playing at 7. The other one playing at 5, the entire sort of rugby championship thing. But one is probably, in theory, if we put it bluntly, a Franco Master for me is a better player than a Marvin Ori.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Stevie, because for me, it really depends on the type of game that you're going for. And we've lost something in our lineouts. I'm not too sure what it's come down to, but we were competing for a lot of lineouts for a very long time, and suddenly that seems to have died away. We haven't quite got that right lately, and we've also struggled to secure our own ball of late. And so we got to ask the question as to who's the better exponent. First thing you got to do is make sure you win 100% of your lineouts every single week, week in and week out. From that perspective, I think if you're going for safety first, I would probably go with Marvin to start in that position. I think Franco's not really had a lot of time at lock. But when he was, and being a Lions fan, we spent a lot of time watching him. He was honestly one of the best disruptors of a lineout that you will ever find. If they can work on that, I guess, in the lead up to the World Cup, and they can find that form in him again, because we haven't seen it from him, I can't tell you if he's still got it in him. Which I'm sure he does, though. And then I think that he's got to start. But again, just based on what we've seen so far, probably Marvin for the safety option.
I mean, who would have thought that a year ago we'd be talking about Marvin Orie potentially being our starting five coming into the World Cup? It's amazing how things have changed. And people were talking about even as far as 2-3 weeks ago, he shouldn't even be in the squad, let alone an option to start. And all of a sudden, he's potentially in line there. I think it's a very good point.
We talked about it before. We say he's never going to do anything spectacular, but he'll do the job for you.
And if you're a set piece team, guaranteeing set piece ball is half the fight.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you might be able to put in a more X factor type lock, like an Arceus Neyman, for example. But would you rather be operating at 90-95% of your lineouts or 80-85% of your lineouts? And have an X factor player, and there's not necessarily a right answer to that. But as a set piece driven side, having that player who you know you can rely on winning those lineouts and being able to set that up is so crucial. And I suppose that's a little bit of a worry if Dion Free, for example, is coming off hooker. I mean, we haven't seen him throw a ball into a lineout ever. I don't think in the green and gold.
That's I think we're basing a lot of our decisions, a lot of our choices in selection on what guys have done in the past or have been known to do, and they haven't really shown us that they still have it in them. These are professional rugby players. I'm sure they continue to work on the skills that they used to have. I'm sure Franco's still jumping in lineouts and stuff, but yeah, it's hard to make a call from the sidelines.
Interesting. Whenever you see training and stuff like that, he's often jumping and stuff like that. That's an interesting point. So, really, do you think? Lots of people, and this often happens when you're playing badly. Lots of people talk about the fact that it's about not showing your cards and about keeping stuff back. How much do you think we can expect to be different? Do we think that what we're going to be seeing at the World Cup is kind of what we've been trying to do, or do you think there has been a lot of this is what the plan is for the World Cup? We don't want to show things too early, and we've actually got this whole different plan that no one's actually expecting. That come the World Cup, we're suddenly going to bring up this whole different thing, and trying to implement it, which is a very hard thing to do.
I think in terms of the selections, again, being forced by the injuries that have occurred, the replacement players obviously are going to have to lay the groundwork for the forwards. So if we look at the composition of the squad, it's 19 forwards, 14 backs. And there's a large attrition rate as well in terms of the competition as we go on playing against the likes of Tonga. But I think if we lay the right platform in terms of the forward dominance, the hunger that I was talking about, then we can see the likes of the excitement of the Kainan Moody, Kurtley Arendse, or the experience of Makazola Mapimpi. I also just want to add, don't be surprised if we see all of those 5 players on the standby list feature in the World Cup somewhere or another.
Yeah, I think I'm very interested to see what we try and do and what we don't try and do, and how quickly we move away from what we're trying to do. I mean, it's one thing saying we've got this plan, but it doesn't always work. How much do you commit to the plan? Or how much do you then suddenly fall back on what is sort of tried and tested? And I suppose it's a game of don't blink. And Carl, it's been interesting because a lot of people, for example, say that they're saying, well, Ireland have shown their cards. We all know how they play. Therefore, maybe they can become predictable in inverted commas. Well, I think that the way that they play at the moment is so far away from being predictable. that's not necessarily the case. But that is an interesting sort of point in terms of this game of cat and mouse. You know, you're going to go, Ireland SA walk onto the pitch, and Ireland go, well, I'm pretty sure you're going to do this, but you might do this. And SA are going to go, well, I'm pretty sure you're going to do this. You might do this. We've decided, and it's like this whole thing of, do you play your own game plan? Do you try and nullify the opposition game plan? And where do you find that balance as well in terms of preparing for opposition versus this is how we play. If we execute well, we can beat any team with it.
I think for me personally, I mean, look, coaches may do it, and they may not say they may never say anything about it. But let's be honest, like what was the one thing that we were always taught when we would fuck around in school and, you know, during practice time and not do what we were meant to be doing? Practice how you play. And I think the constant thing of, oh, you know, we're not going to show what we can do until the World Cup. Chances are they're going to fall apart because they haven't been able to prove that it works. And I don't see anything different coming from Ireland in the World Cup. I think, just thinking about it now, I do wonder how the backline selections for South Africa will affect the bomb squad. Will they now have to reshuffle the bench system just because they don't have all of the options they would want for the bench?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that people are talking about. Maybe Reece, you can elaborate on that. Does the injuries we've got, for example, now necessitate maybe a move away from a 6-2 and to a more orthodox 5-3?
Yeah, I think it has to. I really, really do. I don't think we can afford to, especially when we're taking more risky options in a starting lineup. If those guys aren't performing and you've only got 2 to pick from on the bench to really fill those voids, honestly, no one wants to see Cocker Smith running down the wing again. The man is very capable and he's a 7th player, but he knocks people out when he's on that wing. And he more often than not lands up with a card somehow. And so it's just, we can't have that kind of shortage in a World Cup year. And to be honest, I don't think we necessarily need the bomb squad tactic. Not to say that it's dead in the water and the idea is gone. I think it's overkill sometimes. I really do. And there's a time and a place for it. Especially like Carl said, when you've got your perhaps first string backlines of backline, then it's not so much an issue. Then you can go and pack those forwards in. You're facing a full strength New Zealand, and you want to make sure that you come off that bench fresh as a daisy. Hitting on that talk again, in line with the change in perhaps bench, is I'm worried about the fitness of the squad in general. Not talking about injury fitness, I'm talking about just general fitness. When we went to Japan, as everyone now knows, having watched the documentary and we saw the prep after the World Cup, we went there earlier than anyone else to Japan. We played in the heat. The guys lost like 10 to 15 kilograms in some cases, and they were fit as anything. We all saw that shirtless photo of them, which they took post the start of the World Cup, and everyone was shredded, Bongi included, just ripped to hell. I'm not quite seeing that just yet. From this current crop of squad players. And I think that we might suffer when we move to that 5-3 split if we're not as fit as we were back then. And those 5 forwards are going to have to carry the workload a bit more. I really hope that they get this preseason right, that they come in hot.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, I think. And it's a very different type of preseason to last time, where it is all these different warm-up matches. For example, last time we only had one warm-up match against Japan, and we did have basically a 3-week camp, whereas now it's going to be more a two warm-up games and then like a 1-week camp really before sort of the World Cup and stuff. So it's a very different thing to 2019 with regards to the conditions. Look, I suppose the nice thing is it's not as hot, it's not as, you know, physically, I think it's going to be as tough playing in France in sort of in autumn than it was in Japan, where it was incredibly hot. But yeah, I think the conditions as well will be interesting to see how we kind of cope with those condition stuff. But we were just talking a little bit about maybe Spatsiya Kolisi. He hasn't played a game yet for the Springboks. He was been training. He was running around in the captain's run, and even running around a little bit in the warm-up. So he looks like he's pretty much ready for the return. And I think some people have been asking, well, why does Kolisi get picked without having played a game, coming back from injury, not part of the Kanyam? I think the simple answer is he's a completely different situation with regard to that injury. But is he a concern from a match fitness point of view, or is what we've seen for the last few years when he's been playing some of his best rugby enough to sit there saying, when he pulls on that Bok jersey, he's always fine?
I think for the fact of how he galvanizes South Africa. We talk about stronger together. I don't think there's any doubt having him there would be an opportunity for South Africa to get behind the box even more so. And in light of his recent performances up until the injury, he's really shown there were doubters right up. I mean, after the 2019 World Cup, you could listen to people still doubting whether he would be the best open side that we have. And if you just combine the galvanizing effect and his playing ability, I think the two together make like a superpower for us. And keep in mind, let's not forget that the last time we had a World Cup in France, South Africa won. So, yeah.
Yeah, please don't remind me.
Yeah. Oh, you must know. I don't come in with your England crap.
Thank fuck it won't be the same this year.
Yeah, because England won't make a final.
Yeah, I was
No,
about to
we
say.
won't. We're not getting out the pools, mate.
And yeah, you don't deserve
Man
it
in
to
Argentina.
be fair. Yeah, Reece, I think expanding on that, I mean, Sia, as I said, becomes such an important player, and maybe not even just the leadership, but more in the sort of playing ability as well. People have spoken about the fact that Marco Starden's had good games, Kwaka Smith's had certain games, but he just brings a whole different sort of dimension from his playing abilities, doesn't he, at the moment with the form he was in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think I saw a lot of, well, not a lot. I saw a couple of dissenters in the comments on the announcement when Sia was announced as if it was going to be a huge surprise. And they're like, "Oh, I can't believe he's getting picked." And I'm like, listen, Sia, as when he puts on a Bok jersey, as you said, he's a completely different beast. Domestic form aside, he seems to elevate his game every single time. With that in mind, though, the one thing I will say is that they've always seemed to manage Sia quite well. So when he's returned from injury or he needs a bit of time or whatever, they haven't been afraid to, let's say, sub him off after 50 minutes and say, look, we're comfortable that your position off the field is not going to impact on our leadership. So, Dwayne steps up or one of the other boys steps up into that captaincy role. And obviously they feel comfortable enough, and we have been blessed with Lucy's for a very long time, that if they need to play him shorter, we've got someone there to step into his shoes. Having with all of that in mind, though, again, if anyone has followed his social media and seen the way he's been hyping himself up, I would say, over the past couple of months while he's been in injury, the man looks insanely ready. Whether it's a PR stunt for himself, he's just trying to get himself hyped, but he looks like he's working hard. Mm-hmm. He seems galvanized. He seems ready to go. And that's the kind of thing you want to see from a player. He's exuding confidence in himself, and I think that he's going to be tremendous.
Right. So then I think the last point, as we sort of start to wrap up here, is which players do you think are under pressure maybe for sort of their finals, for their big spots in sort of the big games, and which players do we think have actually forced themselves into not just the squad now, but actually being into sort of the starting, the 23. I mean, I think we all know that these days starting on the bench is pretty irrelevant with regards to your abilities. It all kind of come down to the game plan. But Carl, which players do you think have all of a sudden put the names into the hat to be in that 23, which maybe weren't 2 or 3 months ago?
I mean, for me, the one I'm actually most happy about as well is Esterhuizen. I barely getting a look in last year, arguably, closer to 3 months ago than that, and then has one just incredible game, and now he's in the squad. Probably should start.
Yeah. I'm not convinced he will start, but I definitely think he's given them something
to
think about.
He might not, but
No, I agree though. I think he has been one of those players who I think has given them something to think about. Reece, any players for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got a whole list going on there. I think we've got a scrummy issue. I do. I think that's still up for debate if you're talking about your stronger side. I think both our wingers, and I think Villi's nailed down 15, but Damien, if he comes into form, could possibly challenge for the right kind of game.
And Ruud, anyone for you?
Just on a lighter note, I don't think he's under pressure, but he's got a lot of responsibility. I think I've just been made aware of the fact that Faf de Klerk is going to be our third choice hooker, so he's throwing in the lineouts. But coming back to your question,
he has jumped in a lineup before.
Yes.
I'm sorry, he jumped. He got launched into the stratosphere. Okay.
But I think coming back to your point, a player like Marco van Staden, in light of Sia Kolisi's injury, stood up in the games. And then obviously, like Cal said, your Andre Esterhuizen, and then just your outside backs. If you take a look at Kane and Moody, obviously he's only played a handful of games, but I think it was enough for them to see that he's definitely going to be putting pressure on the guys who have been there, done that already, and won a World Cup. So it's going to be exciting. I'm very positive, to say the least.
Roots, if you had to pick
South
two,
Africa
if you had to pick two
can
winners
most
tomorrow,
certainly win this World Cup if they just push with that hunger, passion, intensity that we have. You know, after that long night of a brandy and coke festival or something, if we can just get that babalas gees in us, I think we'll win.
oh boy.
So basically, pack the Richelieu, and we'll be okay.
Not
Yeah.
not the kick.
No.
Oh, notable omission, the Piwe Dianti.
I was so ready for that. I was on Twitter. I was like, just do it. What have you got
We
to
were happy.
lose?
We were happy ourselves up in the group chat for that.
We were like, could you imagine they just
at
drop
first it was
him?
a joke, and all
Imagine
of
we
a
just
sudden
drop
we
him
were,
and they just take him and they say, right, we'll start him against Romania. What's the worst that can happen?
do you know what's quite scary is if he hadn't appealed his initial sentence, he would have been playing. What was it? Almost a year ago, I think.
Yeah, I think you would have had.
So he would
What I
have
think annoys me
been-
the most about the entire thing is just been the lack of clarity we ever gotten, because there was talks about him going to the Court of Arbitration of Sport and stuff like that. Another thing, there was never really a lot of willing information stuff out there about him. Look, he's going to win the 2027 World Cup for us, so we don't need to worry about him. And he's going to win World Player of the Year in the next 2 years.
I must be honest. I don't understand why he ever appealed that ban. I mean, what did he got found with 3 of the compounds in both Diana Ball, Winstrol, and I think Anavar as well. Something. I mean, one compound is okay. Maybe you could pass it off. All 3 compounds, you're like, oh my goodness, dude.
Right, you're done fucked up.
Yeah, like mate, what are you doing?
Hey, but
Take
now
it
he's at
and
the
move on.
Sharks, so fuck it.
Yeah, and then he goes to the one place where everybody seems to be buckling. But anyway, let's not get
Thank
into the
you.
Pee Wee
You're
Dianti
not
chat.
wrong, but-
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. To everybody else in the chat, thank you for the messages. Thank you for all the votes in the poll and stuff like that. I asked, can the Springboks win the World Cup? 78% of people saying yes, they can. That doesn't mean they will. It means that we believe that they can. A lot of shocks, a lot of interesting things. We've got a lot of time now to talk about. We're only in action next weekend against Wales, then a week later against New Zealand. So we still got a bit of time to sort of really sort of absorb the squad, look at it, and start understanding where we really are. But it has been a very interesting day, to say the least, because I think there was certainly at least even 4 to 5 selections that probably we weren't quite expecting when we woke up this morning. So to everybody else, please do smash like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. We are imperiously close to 36,000 subscribers, so hopefully we'll get there before this weekend. We will be live both games this weekend, and then obviously next weekend and the weekend after, there's a hell of a lot of rugby, so there's a lot to come up.
And happy Women's Day to all our
And
fellow
all the
South
South
Africans.
Africans, happy Women's Day, and enjoy the public holiday tomorrow. Carl and Lux, what happens when you leave?
I had one yesterday, but it did fuck all.
Well, there we go. That's the way to go. People, thank you very much. And to the panel, thank you guys. Enjoy the week. And we will see you guys all next week, Thursday, when the fan forum returns to its usual slot. And apart from that, I'll probably see you guys on Thursday when we go back to some Rugby News Live, where we continue to talk about this and exactly what's going to happen in the next few weeks. Keep well, keep safe, and I'll see you guys all next time.